Good morning. Still good morning. Good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, we're delighted to see you here this morning for another press conference on fentanyl. I'm Diane Dixon, and I represent Assembly District 72, which is in Orange County. I probably share the fact that we all are saddened, frustrated, concerned, and angry about the rise of fentanyl-related deaths happening in California. As you have likely heard, fentanyl poisoning is now the #1 cause of death for Americans aged 18 to 45. In 2021, there were nearly 6,000 opioid-related deaths in California. From 2019 to 2020, there was a 162% increase in fentanyl-related deaths in Orange County. The most updated statistics for Orange County, where I am, report that in 2021, 717 people died as a result of fentanyl. These statistics are not going the other way. They're only going up while we're standing here. We can only guess at the unreleased 2022 death data, but we can assume that the number of unnecessary deaths continue to climb in every city and every county in California. These numbers are unacceptable, and this data clearly showcases the urgency this crisis requires. We are here today to tell you about our solution. There is a solution. For several years, my colleagues have been working on passing Alexandra's Law, a bipartisan, bicameral issue through the legislative process. Thank you to Senator Umberg and Senator Ochoa Bowe for their leadership and hard work this session with Senate Bill 44. Sadly, Senate Bill 44 failed to pass the Senate Public Safety Committee. I'd also like to thank former Senator Melendez and Assembly members Jim Patterson and Joe Patterson for their attempts at passing Alexandra's Law. The debate they have created has laid the foundation for where we are today. So, we bring you ACA 12, which will take Alexandra's Law to the voters in the form of an Assembly constitutional amendment. As many of you may know, Alexandra's Law would require the court to implement a fentanyl admonishment to people who are convicted or charged with various drug offenses, to be advised that if a person subsequently dies as a result of that action, he or she may be charged with a homicide up to and including the crime of murder. This is based on the Watson admonishment found in current law. For background, the Watson admonishment relates to drunk driving, so this is a natural extension. ACA 12 will need to go through the legislative process first as a proposed constitutional amendment. However, the ACA as a proposed constitutional amendment no longer relies on the legislature to make this decision, as it allows the voters to make the final call. This is an opportunity for us to let the voters decide once and for all. This common sense, as the district attorney has said a moment ago, no-brainer solution should be law. The fentanyl crisis is tearing our communities apart and devastating our families, friends, and neighbors. No parent or family should have to suffer the loss of a child. We need to do something, and this is a solution that gets to the heart of the fatal issue, the dealer. Let's take this critical life and death matter directly to the voters. I want to thank you for being here, and I'd like to welcome Alexandra's dad, who's been a lead fighter in this battle for almost, sadly, 5 years, Matt Capilouto, to say a few words, and then he'll be followed by a number of other speakers. So thank you, and welcome to the podium. Matt, there you are.
I'd like to thank Assembly Member Dixon for inviting me to speak today. As some of you may know, I do this quite a lot. I do it too much. I leave behind my means of making a living and my wife, who is suffering from terminal cancer. But we know just how important this is. At this point, with the astonishing number of deaths we are seeing caused by this street poison fentanyl, I shouldn't have to come up here every few months to beg our state representatives to do something about it. Polling shows Californians overwhelmingly support holding fentanyl dealers accountable. It's not even close. Californians want accountability for those who trade the lives of our friends and family for dollars. In the face of an epidemic of death and destruction in our neighborhoods caused by this drug and the dealers, some within our state legislature absolutely refuse to do what it takes to hold people accountable for this scourge. Alexandra's law is simple and reasonable. It holds drug dealers accountable when they knowingly murder Californians with fentanyl. If someone is convicted of manufacturing or selling fentanyl, they will receive a warning letting them know that if they don't stop and someone dies as a result of their continued action, they can be charged with murder. This law won't pack our jails with those committing petty drug offenses, as some of our legislators falsely say it will do. What it will do is give law enforcement the ability to stop someone who continues to sell a drug that results in instant death. More importantly, it will dissuade many drug dealers from continuing to peddle this poison. It gives drug dealers a choice: turn away from the drug dealing game or pay a price. But 4 times now, over the last 3 years, the Senate and Assembly Public Safety Committees turn their backs at holding these dealers accountable for killing our friends and family. With no consequences, it's no wonder California leads the nation in fentanyl deaths. Thank you, California elected officials. You have failed us all. How many lives could have been saved by now? I can tell you of at least 3 who are standing with me here today. Perla Mendoza's son Elijah, Marika Cole's son Merrick, Laura Didier's son Zach were sold counterfeit pills containing fentanyl by drug dealers with previous convictions. And in Merrick's case, the dealer is still out there today, risking lives of other unsuspecting victims. But apparently the crisis hasn't risen to the level of a panic for the safety committees. For people like me, I'm well beyond that. It's now time to let the people of California decide that they can save the lives of fellow Californians, that they can do something about it. Republicans and Democrats here in Sacramento need to stop playing politics and come together to let the voters decide. You say you represent us. Well, I challenge you to prove it. Stand up for our ability to decide. I can't bring back my beautiful Alexandra, for whom this law is named. And this law won't take away any of the pain our family and many families like ours deal with every single day. But it can save lives. And that's why I stand before you once again. Please join me in supporting this effort. The lives of Californians depend on it. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Joe Patterson. I represent the 5th Assembly District, Placer and El Dorado counties. A few weeks ago, I participated in a hearing as a member of the Select Committee on Fentanyl and Opioids that had a range of people come in and talk about their proposed solutions to the fentanyl crisis. And one of the gentlemen who's a public defender at one point stated something that struck me. He said he was concerned about the trauma of the drug dealers that they've experienced in their life, and all they were trying to do was put food on the table. What about the trauma caused for the families of the victims? What about the the trauma caused to my constituent, Laura Didier, who lost her son, Zach. She would like nothing more than to put food on the table for Zach. But she doesn't have that opportunity because that guy, who, by the way, is not a drug addict, was more interested in making a buck and costing the life of my constituent than he was actually, trying to do good things. I'm not worried about his trauma at all. Fentanyl's here, it's everywhere. And it's in our schools, it's in our communities. Just last week, Rockland Police Department arrested a man who lives in Rockland with 20,000 lethal doses of fentanyl. This is in a town of about 71,000 people, and if it's in Rockland, it's in every community. I'm not worried about the trauma of the poor drug dealer who's poisoning the kids in our community. He needs to be held accountable. All this bill does, what's crazy to me, which, by the way, I introduced the legislation on the Assembly side this year, AB 18. All this legislation does is provide a warning. Why would you not want to provide a warning to people that they can already, under current law, be charged with murder? Current law already allows that. We have a district attorney right behind me, who you'll hear from in a second, who is charging people with murder who know the risk that they're involved in. This is giving people a warning that that could actually happen. I personally believe Democrats and Republicans, the majority of them in the Capitol, support this legislation. In fact, we know it on the Senate side, where the majority of senators signed on to co-author SB 44. But we have a small minority on the public safety committees that run every single bill that come out or that are proposed in that committee, and they kill it, and they don't give an opportunity for the entire legislative body to hear the bills. I believe if these bills got on the floor, if this constitutional amendment gets on the floor, it will pass. And I've received some questions about, well, hey, look, Joe, your bill failed in the Assembly committee. Senator Umberg's bill failed in the Senate committee. What makes you think you have hope with an ACA? We are not giving up. If it doesn't happen this year, we're going to bring it back next year. And we're going to bring it back every single year until we have leaders that have courage to hold people accountable that are poisoning our residents in our community. And with that, I'm very honored to introduce a leader a prosecutor who is saving lives by holding people accountable that are murdering our children. And with that, I introduce Placer County District Attorney Morgan Geyer.
Good morning. First, I'd like to thank Assembly Members Dixon, Alanis, and Assemblymember Patterson for introducing ACA 12. They continue to fight, along with the Assembly members behind me, in this fentanyl crisis, and it takes a multifaceted approach. We have to emphasize accountability on the part of the drug dealers as heavily as we have to emphasize harm reduction tools available to us. This is not just a public health problem. This is a public safety problem. And ACA 12 and AB 18 and SB 44 and SB 1350 and SB 350 is just that, a common sense approach to help prosecutors have one more tool available to hold drug dealers accountable. To be clear, this law gives a warning to drug dealers who are convicted of dealing drugs. It tells them something they already know, that fentanyl is everywhere and it's deadly. Best case scenario, they go on their way and we never hear from them again. But if they choose to continue their behavior and sell and kill, the consequences will increase and they will be severe. As I mentioned to Assemblymember Dixon earlier, that's a no-brainer solution. The prosecutors in court, day in and day out, will have one more tool available. They will be able to refute the disingenuous, I didn't know it was dangerous when I sold. And I have been in the committee hearings at the Assembly and Senate Public Safety. I have heard the concerns of the committee members, and those concerns are not grounded in reality. The drug dealers who are poisoning, particularly our young people on the street, are not innocent, accidental dealers sharing a pill with their friends. They are calculated. They are selling what they know to be poison, and this advisement will warn them of something they already know. And when they do it again, the consequences will be severe. That is part of the multifaceted approach that will help solve this fentanyl crisis. This bill, this ACA, has had incredible support in the legislature. And I can tell you, being in the community, it has incredible support among our community members. This is a solution that people want. It should be something that was debated on the floor of the entire legislature. And now it is rightfully something that should be supported and given to the people of the state of California. I am eternally grateful for these lawmakers behind me, specifically my friend and my assembly member, Joe Patterson, who has continued the fight on all aspects of this fight, from naloxone in schools to holding dealers accountable. All aspects of this crisis, these folks behind me have addressed. And it's time now to let the people of the state of California be heard. Thank you.
You are, Mr.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. My name is Juan Alanis. I'm the Assembly Member representing the 22nd District, which includes Stanislaus and Merced County. I'm proud to stand here today and join my colleagues in introducing this thoughtful and common sense measure. There are many conversations happening about how best to fight fentanyl crisis, and while some have had difficulty in even getting a hearing, this ACA stands as a true bipartisan effort to hold those accountable that prey on our kids and our communities. I believe by passing this constitutional amendment, we give California voters a clear choice and a chance to choose a path forward, giving our law enforcement and justice system another tool to combat this crisis. I've said it before, we need to look for opportunities to do more both on the front end and in the back end. And we must support prevention and enforcement efforts at all times. Let me be clear. I believe we must both enhance penalties for those who are knowingly and willingly spreading this poison across our state. And we must also be willing to invest in at-risk youth and communities in prevention-related measures. This measure checks both of those boxes, and I want to thank Assemblymember Dixon for her leadership on this measure and inviting me to join as a joint author. Thank you very much. I also want to thank my colleagues, Assemblymember Patterson, for his tireless effort on this issue. As you guys have heard earlier, him speak today, being very passionate about this. I also want to thank my colleagues from across the aisle, Senator Alvarado Gil and Assemblymember Petrie Norris, for working across party lines to find solutions. Solutions cannot wait for tomorrow. They cannot wait for the next legislature. They cannot wait for the next decade. We must do more, and we must do it now. Let's let the voters weigh in directly. Apparently, that's the only way we're going to be able to make this happen. I look forward to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, collaboratively, on policies that reduce the supply of fentanyl, support addiction treatment programs, and ultimately saving lives here in California. As you all know, I come from a career in law enforcement, and so I could speak directly on how I see families being hit with this and watching it in the court system and watching people walk or not be held accountable for what should be done and which should have been done many years ago. So I'm thankful to be standing here today and be standing with everybody to take a step towards that future that we all need and that we all want. Because fentanyl does not care what race you are, how old you are, the sex, or anything like that. So again, thank you, Ms. Dixon, for doing this and making this possible, and thank you all for being here today. You want to go and introduce her?
Oh, yes, she. Yes,
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you can.
So it's my honor and pleasure to invite up here Series Councilwoman Rosalinda Vieira. Thank you.
Thank you.
When it comes to fentanyl overdoses and the crimes, our local law enforcement are often the first ones to contact both the victims and criminals. I myself have 4 adult children in that target age zone. I also have a daughter who's a drug intake counselor and sees it firsthand on the impact it's having in our community and amongst our youth. While I'm here today as a local councilwoman representing the City of Ceres District 2, I share a lot of the same concerns that the many colleagues that I see behind me are sharing with you today. It's vital that California continue to work in supporting our cities and our counties with resources and laws necessary to help continue our local law enforcement and public safety officials in protecting our communities and our youth and our families. I want to thank the Assembly members and senators today that are leading the change in this important issue starting here in Sacramento. And I look forward to working with all of them as well as the community with sensible solutions in fighting this fentanyl crisis. Thank you.
Well, this concludes our press conference this morning, so I want to open up questions to anyone standing behind me, to all of you. If you'd like to answer questions, welcome. We're going to take this to the voters. You've heard it loud and clear. That's what our challenge is. That's what our opportunity is. The polls are showing that people want this, want a solution, want a solution. There are many more solutions that are still needed, but we'll focus on this and let the voters decide. We're on our way. We've got great support for this, and we're moving forward. And we appreciate your continuing to bring visibility to this ongoing crisis for the people of California. So if you'd like to ask a question, the floor is yours. I can't answer how they're reacting to it. I do know, I'm not a lawyer, and I'll ask the district attorney to possibly come forward to speak on this, but my understanding is those challenges were not based correctly on how the law is to be interpreted. Did you want to, Morgan, comment on that? Or Mr. Saleh?
Go first.
I was just going to comment. The language in the bill is legally satisfactory. Putting someone on notice simply does that. It just gives them information. And when they act in the future with that information, now they can be held criminally liable. Prosecutors have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that someone knew that what they were doing was dangerous. And in the world of fentanyl, that comes generally from our public awareness campaigns, but specifically with this bill, it puts that knowledge directly on them so that they can't later claim, I didn't know. And that's all that language does.
Any other questions? Yes. Well, it will be introduced. It has been introduced. I put it over to the clerk yesterday. It's ACA 12, so it has been introduced, and it will just now begin to be set for a committee hearing, assigned to a committee, and it will go through the legislative process. Because it is a proposed constitutional amendment, it can be introduced at any time, and such is what we're doing. So it will go through the normal process. At the same time, we will be preparing the groundwork for this if it were one way or the other to become on a ballot in 2024. So we'll be moving forward in that way. Thank you. Next question. Well, I'll refer to one of my Republican colleagues who'd like to speak on their conversations with the Democrats. Joe, do you want to talk about that? Or Bill? Bill or Juan?
I don't mind. I don't mind speaking. So our members on the other side of the aisle are just upset as we are, for the majority of them. And I think once they start hearing more of the voices of California and hearing that everyone else is on board and they support them and knowing their constituents, that's a big thing as well. Constituents need to reach out to their members that are having difficulties or who have not voted on anything related to fentanyl. And their voices need to be heard because, as you guys all know here, it doesn't matter, again, on party lines. We're trying to make this a bipartisan, not even a party issue. So conversations that I've been having with members across the aisle have been, they're supportive of this as well. I think if they had a chance on the floor to vote on this, as unfortunately it didn't pass in the committees, they would like to have their voice, I guess you can say, in court as well. Thank you. To be honest with you, I haven't had that conversation with him. I would hope that he would be on board with all of us on this as well. Maybe from other members, I may be getting that temperature, I guess you could say, with that. But I have a lot of hope for this happening in the future. Thank you.
And when I have talked with the other part of the Democrat co-authors, there was immediate support and willingness to participate. They've been authoring the similar bills, so we've all been moving this forward together. Question? Oh, all right. Any other question? Yes, ma'am. I can't speak for them. I wish they were. They were invited. They may have other obligations, so I don't think there's anything to read into that. It's just a matter of obligations, and but they're on the bill, and that's what counts. Yes.
So we heard from Alexandra's father. I know seeing Zach's mother here, as we did at that subcommittee a few weeks ago, and even from Assemblymember Patterson, who spoke about how this keeping on, this keeps on coming here, right?
Yes.
Keep on talking about that. Can you talk about the frustration you have that it got to this level that you have to bring it out before the voters?
You know, our frustration that results in this proposed ACA is just a manifestation of what the families are speaking. I mean, you talk to these families, they're still here. How many years have you been doing this, Matt? 4 or 5 years since your daughter died? Can I say something? Yeah, sure.
My daughter died in 2019. We brought this legislation forward shortly thereafter. And it's unfathomable for me to be standing here right now, nearly 4 years later, and not a damn thing has been done. I'm not a Democrat, and I'm not a Republican. I'm a dad who lost a daughter. And I want to make something clear with all of you in the media here, because this is important. You can help change the narrative here. This is different than drug deaths that we've seen in years past. My daughter, nor the children of the other parents up here, they didn't die of an overdose. Please do not report that our children died of a fentanyl overdose. They were poisoned. In my daughter's case, she was seeking Percocet. She received a counterfeit pill made to mimic an oxycodone pill, of which she took half before going to bed 2 days before Christmas in 2019. No, it wasn't a wise choice for her to purchase what she believed to be a prescription drug illegally, but it wasn't a choice worthy of a death sentence. And on the other hand, you had a drug dealer who traded her life for a few dollars. You tell me what's the greater evil. Why do we automatically put the burden of blame on the user? The burden of blame needs to be on these dealers of death. And I am frustrated. This is nuts. The Republicans come and support the Republicans. The Democrats come and support their fellow Democrats. What happened to working together? Both sides of the aisle want this. And we have a few select committee members who are holding 40 million Californians hostage. Our system is not working. We need to now take this to the voters.
That's right. So I think you've heard the frustration, and we all share the frustration of working through this process, but we're not going to be held hostage to this process. We are going to overcome it. We're going right to the people. We'll work through the process here, but we know we have the people behind us, and that's what's motivating all of us. So I want to thank you all for being here today. It's one more in a long line of press conferences and media awareness, and that we're trying to drive awareness that there is a solution now, and we are united. And with some of our Democrat colleagues, it is a bipartisan, bicameral effort to unite to save the young people, young and old, in California from being poisoned to death. So I thank you all for coming today, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. Thanks so much.